The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and welcome to RAPA's service-oriented IT e-learning session. Today we're going to be focusing on incident and problem management in a service-oriented IT context. So we'll jump in right away as we normally do. Again, it will be a panelist discussion. We're going to be talking about going beyond technology in terms of incident and problem management and the things you need to be thinking about when you're shifting to a service perspective. So in terms of our participants today, Pierre, I'll let you introduce yourself first.
Sure. My name is Pierre Paquette. I'm the CTO here at RAPA Technologies. I've got 25 plus years starting out in the software development field and developing software applications in IT management. So some in security, some in ITSM. In the last several years, it's been in the IT asset management and IT business management solution space, and also looking at analytics. So a lot going on in IT business these days.
Terrific. My name is Susan Odell, and I'm the COO at RAPA. My role with the company is business leadership, so I focus from our services perspective on making sure that we are aligning our consulting work with business benefits and business outcomes and business improvement. My background is across IT, from systems management, asset management, learning management, and document management systems. And my study is continuing along the ITIL course of best practice and applying that in practical ways to improving IT operations. Richard.
Yeah, my name is Richard Navag. I'm kind of the process guy within RAPA. My role is really, and that has always been to be kind of the interface between the business and the technology from a process perspective, a management perspective. So spent a lot of years focusing on implementing ITIL and IT service management and trying to understand how to make IT more business and service focused. So certainly our three sets of skills are very complementary, and we cover a wide spectrum of the business of IT.
Yeah. That, as well as our 20 plus years, we've been around a little while and seen about every variation of situations out there in the global marketplace.
Yep.
So for some perspective, if it's your first time joining us for one of our e-learning sessions, this is number 8 in a series of, I believe it's 11 sessions. We'll be going beyond that, but would encourage you to visit rapaconsulting.com/resources/videos, and you'll see recordings of our previous 30-minute power e-learning sessions. Today, again, we're focusing on incident and problem management, but we do not want this to be an ITIL education session. You can go onto different web resources and go about learning details, but we really want to focus on the fact that you have to address the whole stack of the service hierarchy within IT when we talk about resolving incidents and resolving problems, and that obviously influences the way that you're going to communicate around that. We'll get into that in a bit more detail, but right off the top, right, it's about supporting the hierarchy at every level and the nuances that you need to think about as you're managing incidents and problems. So I'll move on to the next slide, and Richard, if you could just take us through a high-level introduction to incident management from a service-oriented perspective.
Okay, yeah. So on the left-hand side, you can see some of the kind of the standard standard statements about incident management in an ITIL or IT service management context. So what incident management is about: tracking and resolving incidents. An incident being something that is not working or not working the way it's intended to work from a service you're delivering. So the incidents usually either come in through users calling it in, or sometimes through discovery, event management type tools that come in from an IT perspective, where you can see that an incident is going to happen. The intent of incident management is obviously to get the user back up and running as quickly as possible. It's not about fixing the thing forever. It's not about finding the underlying cause, but really about a workaround or a permanent solution, but something that can be done really quickly. Usually, incidents are integrated, the incident management process is integrated at the service desk level with service request management. The difference between the two being that, incident management and an incident is about something you already have that is not working or not working the way you want to, whereas service request is about getting something new or something changed to how you're getting things now. So there are a lot of similarities between the two, but they do need to have different processes, and it's important to do so.
So this graphic you see in the middle, and Pierre, I'll just hand it over to you in a second, is really the crux of what we're getting at, that there are multiple layers, and this is even simplified. You can get a lot more granular in terms of the things that sit behind or impacted by an incident, but these are the 4 buckets we wanted to focus on.
Yeah, I was just going to add that in a lot of cases when you're talking about incident management, we'll get into problem in a minute, but from an incident management point, it is very operational, it is very technical. So making the relationship out to business and to business services or a business perspective is always a little challenging. And I think a lot of organizations have that challenge or that difficulty in that, the incidents for them is about keeping the lights on, keeping their users working, and minimizing the downtime. So, often incidents are processed to, quickly get them up and running. So thinking about things like SLAs and OLAs is maybe not top of mind, and talking about the service itself is probably not top of mind either, let alone start talking about business services and then the finance and human resource implications. So it's a little bit further away as well.
Right. So that
one of the aspects. Oh, sorry, Sue.
No, go ahead, Richard, please. Thanks.
So one of the aspects that's key to this is with regards to the importance of the incidents you're dealing with and prioritization. I mean, it's easy to start prioritizing from an IT perspective of this is what I want to do first because either it's more interesting, either I think myself it's more important. But really, incident management is about understanding the importance of what you're dealing with from a business perspective. And the incident may seem ridiculous to you as an IT guy, but from a business perspective, it may be fundamental. If the incident is about, not being able to print a report, it may seem to the IT guy as being something that is very simple and not very important. But if that report is something that's due, for a financial statement that has to be produced by year end, that report all of a sudden has like this massive importance from a business perspective. So it's really about understanding more than just the technical side of the incident, but what does it mean from a business perspective?
So that's the word that was popping into my head as you were talking about this, Richard, is traceability, right? There's traceability of not just the incident, but the printing a report. Are we being proactive in how we're managing things in our environment so that when that incident comes up, we have some degree of traceability back within IT, but also traceability up through the business in terms of, does this one person who's reporting this error might be something that's happening in other business departments and other business units. So that whole concept of traceability, I think, is key. And, some of the bullets we have on the right side there in terms of what else is impacted by shared infrastructure, that's about traceability, or who else is impacted on the business side, that's about traceability and knowing how things are connected and who they might affect.
Yeah, well, definitely that's an important aspect. And one thing, sorry, Pierre, I'll let you jump in right after. One thing to consider too is that IT needs to have an understanding of this from a business perspective, not to have something pull over their eyes either and not see the truth. I mean, if you have one user that is louder, more forceful than the others, that doesn't mean that they have to have priority. So you need to be able to understand how this really relates to it from a business perspective, and understand that you're not just being, fooled by a user that knows how to play the game of prioritization. Sorry, Pierre, go ahead.
No, that's all good. All I was going to add is that those bullets on the right, you start thinking about them while you're doing your incident management, but you can't not do them if you really want to get into problem management, because I think those 4 bullets are really the precursor into, problem management. How do you look at the big picture, and how do you see who's impacted and what services are impacted, leads you down the path towards doing, incident and then true problem management, which again is a challenge in a lot of organizations, is to get to that level. They do incident because it's, tied to service requests, and you get people, complaining about things not working or things not working the way they'd like to. But to do true problem management really is to start thinking about incidents in terms of who's impacted, what business area is impacted, what service is impacted, and working towards that.
Yeah, and really many organizations kind of mix incident and problem into this big ball of events or tickets or however they call them, and they sometimes miss the the goal of both of these processes. That, from an incident perspective, if something is truly an incident, you need to get the user working as quickly as possible, not find the underlying cause. Whereas if it's a problem, it's no longer more as time sensitive, it's more about, fixing it for good. But when you mix the two together, they're actually conflicting. So if you have IT people that, prefer, spending time and getting down to the actual issue, you may have a user waiting for a solution for long periods of time, which, is not acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if your SLAs are in place and enforced, it helps, but most organizations are not there with, true clear SLAs. They're working on a best effort basis.
Right. So the last bullet is really important, and it's actually a consistent theme across each of the slides in our session today, and that's about communication. So an incident is typically, it can be obviously internal to IT, but when you have a customer who might be a marketing administrator or potentially an accountant in finance or a sales rep, they do not speak the language of IT. So understanding how to communicate where your incident, whoever submitted the ticket, communicating where they live is very important, because they're not going to understand the underpinning technology pieces that have created their inability to update their CRM system. That's not what they're concerned about. They're concerned about being able to meet their goals and their commitments. So again, we'll repeat that again as we go through. So on that note, Richard, problem.
Okay, so problem management, we've already talked about it a bit, but the idea of problem management is really to go and seek the true cause of something happening. So whether that something has already happened and there's a bunch of incidents, or in some cases you can actually start working on a problem without even having incidents in there. It's not a necessity that it needs to start with an incident. Ultimately, you want to remove, the errors from the IT infrastructure, in order to prevent recurrence of incidents or new incidents, or fix even incidents that are currently in play, because in some cases you may not have workarounds. Obviously, problem management is a major initiator of changes to the infrastructure. It's about, it's about finding things and finding things that aren't working and fixing them. And also, obviously, it plays a key part in establishing the known error database, and known errors being, things we know that are there, but we can't necessarily fix right now, but it's a known error, we understand it, so it goes into a known error database. But, really, problem management is more about analysis. It's more about going deep into, what is the underlying cause, how can we fix it, what are the solutions that can come into play. So definitely a totally different, mission than incident management.
So just this is where I put my business hat on, and I look at things through a little bit of a different lens. So let's imagine we've got a business service, and it's IT for finance, and it's a service you offer to the business for all of the technology that allows you to take care of payroll, to take care of your HR, MS, your database. But at the end of the day, if you don't have somebody looking at that service for HR, then your problem might lie, for example, in something that can't be discovered or assessed in a technology way. Maybe you've got a skills gap where the people maintaining some of the underpinning components don't have the right level of skills in order to ensure the uptime that's been committed to in the SLA. So, this whole move of looking at it as a service, what are all the things that are in place supporting that particular service? My problem might lie in an area that is not technology-based but still needs to be considered. So again, from our perspective, those things that you need to bring into the big picture are really important because they're not always tangible, and sometimes they're outliers, right? They lie in places that aren't typically what you would manage within IT.
Right. So in cases, or in most cases, when we're talking about ITSM or about incidents, we always talk about incident and problem. And yes, incidents, you do use your incidents to generate, to identify your problems. But I was going to add, even before you talked about these outliers, is that problems may not necessarily directly come from incidents. I mean, you have incidents that get created around technology, and you may have incidents generated around business practice. But just to be aware that problem management is about problem management, not about managing groups of incidents that then become problems. I know that's part of it, but from a business point of view, and I think that's what you were saying, Sue, is that it's not always a direct line between incident, or technology problem, incident problem. There are other types of problems within the organization.
Well, yeah. So service-oriented IT, right? It's about a holistic view of how IT is delivering a capability in a form of a service. It's easy to understand to the business, and all the complexities of IT need to be, Richard, as you have so articulately coined it, right? It's about insulating your clients from the complexities of IT, and this is entirely no different. And that whole concept in the first bullet of the business relationship manager, that it's an IT resource, but their job is to be that collaborator with the business. Well, part of their job is to be proactive, working with problem management teams to say, let's look at this service. Where do we think we have risk? Where can we avoid problems occurring, incidents occurring? That's a different way of looking at how you're going to manage. It's not about reactive. It's about the proactive approach to avoiding generation of problems. Let's get ahead of the curve.
And it's there's definitely a balancing act on the problem side. Obviously, there's a technical focus to problems and problem management, but it's balancing. What are the important problems? I mean, from an IT and from a business perspective, because there are problems that are strictly IT, but they still may be priorities because in the end they do affect the service we deliver, even if it's not as easy to understand. I mean, if there's a problem with a patch on an OS, it may not seem like it. The business impact may be that direct until you start drawing the lines where the CMDB kind of shows you where this OS is used to support business systems and so on and so forth. So but understanding beyond just technology and then prioritizing it based on what it means to the business, not what IT wants to do, is essential. And that's where, as you said here, the business relationship managers play a really key role. They can tell you what is important to the business, and that's a knowledge that IT needs dearly.
Okay, so I won't repeat myself on the communication problem because our next slide is really talking about that, and I think this is where we can make it even more real for our attendees today. Business versus IT communication. So today we're talking about incident and problem management, and the service desk is the conduit between the business and IT to be able to understand what's going on with clients and relate that to the right teams within IT to resolve it if the service desk can't themselves, to resolve it and escalate it as they need to for resolution. But the communication strategy going in each direction is very different. And I think, Richard, maybe if you could take a couple of minutes to talk about the paradigm that has been the history in IT is on the right side of this, talking about technology. Start there.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the things is and I think this graphic really shows it, is that service desk playing that key role in the middle. From a traditional perspective in many organizations, your service desk, so the point of entry for, certainly incidents coming in, has been focused, has been a point of entry for IT staff. You put your junior guys there. But if you look at the role and what they represent to, the organization as a whole, I mean, you don't necessarily want people there with no experience. You want people that understand the IT side and the business side and are able to, make it work by balancing the two sides. And so it's an essential position, and it's often misunderstood in organizations. Not sure if that was exactly what you wanted me to point to, but that's certainly what comes to mind.
I think that's a great place to start. They have to be able to communicate both ways. Number one, they have to be savvy enough from a technology point of view to determine, obviously at the service desk there are, I don't want to call them scripts, but there are playbooks that you're going to go through to be able to identify and then progress, an event to an incident, and et cetera, and all those good things. But they need to be able to discern, what team do I need to engage in order to resolve an incident, in order to resolve or start to diagnose a problem. That takes skill and understanding. And the larger an organization is, the more complex that kind of diagnosis and support for your end customer, whether the end customer is in IT or whether they are in the business, the more complex that becomes. But at the same time, again, what we're saying is, if we want to leave our customers with a great sense of comfort that their problem is understood, their challenge, their inability to do their job is understood, they need to be able to communicate back to the business in language that shows that understanding. So that's pretty nuanced kind of person that's going to be able to do that well. And so that communication strategy is key. How do you take, at the end of the day, what might be an underlying server that has some kind of problem that's impacting a business service? How do you make that meaningful to the sales manager who can't do their job?
Yeah, the communication is a really important part of it. And here we're talking about business versus IT communication. I would actually bet, or maybe a third area is really the client communication is a third. And typically, incident and problem management have been doing an okay job with the technology side, and I'm saying an okay job because we've in previous sessions we've talked about how to set up your layers and your communication in your language, and we have them here in terms of systems, applications, software, hardware vendors, and IT services. So doing that part, IT is doing an okay job. They need to do a better job so that they can do the technical analysis. But what we're saying here in terms of communication, it's as important to get the business communication strategy in place so that you can talk about business impact, and then also a communication strategy to your client base to have the client impact and being able to keep them in the loop and being aware of what incident and problem we're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I think on that note, we'll move to our takeaways. So I think we're a little bit ahead of our schedule. That's okay. We'll give our attendees a few minutes back to their lunch break today. So the key takeaway, I think we repeated it several times, is to keep in mind the two audiences when managing incidents and problems, customers and internal IT. It's very different in terms of what they care about, what they can comprehend, and what will make them feel like they're going to get some kind of resolution, or at least that the challenge they're facing is being addressed. And that it's that business relationship management role, that's key. If you don't have it in your organization today, this is not necessarily a full-time dedicated position, but depending on the size of your organization, it likely will be. And maybe your business relationship manager has multiple lines of services that they're responsible for. But that's a key role because it is somebody whose job it is to focus on the priorities of the business and how does that translate back into what IT needs to deliver. And that has a direct relationship to continuous service improvement as well. So that's a key role. Richard or Pierre, do you want to take the next one? Next two?
I'll let you go, Pierre. I've jumped in all the time, so Pierre, you want to go?
Okay, sure. So the next one is what we were talking about in the previous slide is spending time and develop that communication strategy from both angles, right? From a business angle, from a technology angle, as well from a client angle. I mean, we could add a third one here, but it's important that the communication is clear and we use the right language so that you can effectively do incident and problem management.
And so the third point, it goes back to the discussion we were having about, the service desk may not be, the ideal entry point for someone into IT. You need the people that are, able to communicate, well-versed, and understand both sides of the coin. And you need to ensure you train them. It's not just a question that they have to have that knowledge, but they actually have to be trained, understand, the new services coming in, how they are used, how they will affect, the users and clients, and so be able to be proactive in how they respond to client or user calls, and not just be a point of entry to type in an incident, but actually help users get things done.
Yeah, I think that's the key point on that last bullet is really the service desk is not the incident desk, right? And that's
Yes.
really important. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so next week we're going down the next week, 2 weeks from now, we're going down the into the depths of IT and talking now about OLAs, operational level agreements, and SLA, service level agreements. Critical in terms of the transformation to service-oriented IT and the relationship between the two. So we look forward to you joining us. That date is incorrect. That's my fault. I don't have the date in front of me right now, but it is not June 23rd because that is today. But please visit our website on our e-learning sessions, upcoming events. You'll find the correct date for that session. If you have any questions about today's topic or if there's anything else you'd like us to cover, please send us a note. And as always, we encourage you to take a look at our IT Analytics Managed Service that we launched last month that can give tremendous insights across 20 areas of raw IT data within the typical IT organization. So any parting thoughts, Richard, Pierre?
Only that that date should be July 7th, so calendars. And no, this is all good. I mean, there's so much to talk about in ITSM, and we're just scratching the surface. So yeah, we'd really like your feedback in terms of other topics, maybe a rehash or even a more in-depth review of some of the topics within the areas we've already talked about. So yeah.
And just on that note, we are obviously available to talk to you about your requirements within your organization as well. So reach out to us, and we're happy to have a chat with you about your requirements.
Great.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Thanks, Pierre. Well, have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Good night. Good day. Bye.
Good night. Good night, Richard. Bye.
Right.